Welcome, welcome, welcome to our Education Committee meeting. We have great things on our committee agenda today. Again, we really appreciate our community that comes to, listen and watch us converse and answer questions and try to understand some of the things on our agenda. But I know that we're going to start right now because as a board, as a school board, we have been invited and are really wanting to attend Mayor Larson's State of the City. And that starts at 6 o'clock at Myers-Wilkins. So without being disrespectful to our presenters, we're certainly here to listen and be connected and want you to share the great things, but we will certainly try to get to Mayor Larson's State of the City address at Myers-Wilkins at 6. So are we going to start with Deb? Are we going to move things along? We're going to wait and do Jeff and Gail's report and let Deb launch in. She's ready. We can if you want to, or not.
Totally up to you.
We work at the shares.
I see. Well, Deb looks like she's raring to go. The mic's on, the PowerPoint's up. And so that is C on our Education Committee agenda. So we will hear from Deb Hanu on art adoption updates, and then we'll go back to Assistant Superintendent Horton's and Curriculum Director Netland's information reports.
Awesome. Can I stand here? Is that okay? If I put my teacher voice on, can you all hear me?
Well, it's not so much us as it is your...
Okay, if I stand closer. Okay, all right. We'll move this a little bit over then if we can. Will this look open? Okay, sorry. Thank you. Good? Okay. All right, that's fine. Thank you. So...
Yes, right there. I don't think I have to stay.
Oh, yeah, I'm not a sitter. Okay. So I just came today to share a few things that are going on with the visual and media arts curriculum, and thought I would just go through a few things in general about the new curriculum. We are in a brand new standards cycle in the state of Minnesota, and I worked on that project, so I have some firsthand background on it. As you know, we have the 5 arts areas, right, that we recognize. In statute right now, public elementary and middle schools must offer at least 3 and require 2 of those 5 arts areas. That hasn't changed from the last time. High schools must offer at least 3 and require at least 1 of those 5 arts areas. In order to graduate, you have to have an art credit sufficient to satisfy all of the state or local academic standards in the arts. So those are the things that have been in statute and continue to be. Where we are at, in elementary schools, we have equal amounts of art and music. They're organized a little bit differently because it's very difficult to deliver an art class in 30 minutes. So it's the same amount of time, but it's set up a little bit differently. So those are the options there. In middle school, we've got the same option in 6th grade, and then in 7th grade, there is no requirement for art. There is a requirement for music. In 8th grade, we just have electives at this point. There's 3 electives in the arts, band, orchestra, or choir, and there's 1 in art, and that goes for the whole year in 8th grade. High schools, these are choices for music and art. And you must take 1 year to get that credit again. The standards are embedded in that. There's also 3 classes right now in current tech ed that are listed for art credit. According to the Department of Ed, the courses that are outside of the art department must meet all of the standards. They must have a CTE licensed teacher, and that teacher must have passed the MTLE test in the visual arts in order to deliver that. Some of the assumptions that guided the standards work: the standards and benchmarks should be as consistent as possible in their learning requirements across all of the arts areas. So I just bring that up as a matter of balance in those arts areas in our district. Obviously, we don't have some of those areas at present time, right? For example, media arts often is poorly defined or ill-defined. You hear it used for everything out there. What it really refers to is our time-based arts, so art of the moving image, like animation, cinematography, that sort of thing. It's where kids live and how they perceive the world today, so it is an extremely important area. Theater, we have wonderful, incredible plays in this district. I hope that you have gone to them or will in the future. I do some of the set work and the props for some of those. Not very many outside experiences, however, and certainly nothing within curriculum. There is a class, I think, called Drama as Literature in high school, but I don't believe that is being offered for an arts standard in any way, shape, or form. And with dance, there is some embedded in physical education classes along the way. So some of the assumptions that guided the standards work, they must be aligned with the knowledge and skills for college and career readiness. That was very intentionally part of the new art standards work. That's not something that is separate from that, but included. Ditto for technology and information sciences. When we did the standards revision, we spent time on all of that and tagged that into the work that we were already doing. And of course, the contribution of Minnesota American Indians, Indian tribes and communities, that was in the past version of the state standards and is, of course, in the current one as well. The new standards were basically modeled after the national standards in the arts in the same 5 arts areas. Minnesota made a few changes. This is one of the changes that was customized to our state. We also cut back on some of the standards from the national. So it's a briefer document that came down to the state level in all of the arts areas. One of the big changes, let's see. The learning is mastered by all students at each grade level in K through 8. That's just a standard statement there. One of the big changes with that is that instead of being grade banded, the past standards were K through 3. There was one set of art standards, 4 and 5. There was another set, 6 through 8, and then 9 through 12. That is no longer the case. The new standards in the state of Minnesota are K, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1 level in high school. So that is a big change for us along the way, not something that has happened before. Of course, artistic literacy is also a piece of that. And if you think about English language arts, you learn parts of speech, you learn what different formats are, different types of poetry and things like that, and then you create and understand what you're reading. And the same thing happens in any of the arts areas. You learn the language of it, you understand what you are doing to put it back together for a specific purpose. So that's also a conscious part of that. I believe the timeline was shared with all of you. It's on the Minnesota Department of Ed webpage, if not, but there's a whole timeline that lays out how the implementation should go, and it's in a 2-year cycle. So they're looking for full implementation by the 21-22 school year. And so you can find that. It's a big, long, yeah, that looks like it, okay, of who should be doing what to prepare for that. Right now they are in the statutory process, so it takes a little while. They don't anticipate any major changes to happen along the way. In terms of what we did here in our district, I'd just like to talk to you about visual and media arts specifically. I know you've already had the presentation from music, I think, a couple weeks ago. So art instruction is spiral, not linear. We've always had kind of a smorgasbord style of curriculum document where there were certain things laid out in each grade level, and teachers could sort of pick and choose how they put those things together to meet those requirements. That's always worked out very well for us because we have different budgets, we come from different parts of town, there's different special events and things going on, and that gives teachers the flexibility to capitalize on those things that are happening in their area. So this time around, I sent out a copy of the current state standards as well as our old curriculum documents and invited teachers to do a curriculum audit. So they coded in green things they were already doing and assessing. They coded in yellow things that they sort of did or maybe didn't assess, and they coded in red things that they really weren't getting to. And so that gave us a little peek at what we were doing well and what we needed to put some more time and energy into along the way. So that was the premise for the revisions that happened. We also did some kind of unit clusters in elementary school to go with the standards-based grading that we started working on a couple of years ago. So we have identified a few themes that things fall into in the first and second semester in the elementary program. So there's basically 4 themes with the addition of foundations, which are your elements and principles of design. And just in terms of what that looks like, having gone through the Mastery Connect training and being sort of interested in that, we kind of came up with our own version. And it's done in Google. Across the top of the document are the actual benchmarks, the new benchmarks that came through the state. So that's the top area. And then if you go down the side, you have the grade level or course content for each one of our classes. And that course content was reviewed by the committees and the teams that have come into work and updated a bit. We have always, for example, integrated reading, math, social studies, and science into our elementary arts courses, at least the same themes and concepts going through. So some of those were updated along the way as well. So you've got your benchmarks going across and your curriculum content going up and down, which creates a little bit of a grid. At the bottom of the page, you can toggle to another page that has a basic preface, like in this course, students will learn this. It contains vocabulary. It has sort of what makes that course different from the others. And since this, there is a visual arts curriculum grid, and there's also a media arts curriculum grid that's been added across the bottom because we realize that a lot of our lessons cross over into both areas. The About page is preface materials, as I said, from the old document. Those are some of the things that are on the parent brochures and that kind of information that we have out there. And then within the grid, there's a place for teachers to plug in their lessons. So, for example, if I'm doing something that fits this particular criteria of my course, and it happens to fit that benchmark, I can plug it into that category. And of course, within the arts areas, as with others, there's a lot of crossover. So you might have one lesson that touches on 3, 4, 5 different things. So those can be tagged in to either of those locations. In addition, those are active links. So you can click on that, and it will take you to another page where teachers can enter some of that nitty-gritty information about their particular lesson or course. So within that lesson page, you're going to see all of the items that are in the Duluth unit plan that we currently have on file. You're going to see a place where it shows whether that teacher is touching on, teaching, or actually teaching and assessing that lesson. A little bit of a description, how the benchmark is assessed if it is in that particular lesson. Those, of course, can be copied and pasted into other benchmarks where they fit with a little bit of tweaking involved. There's a place in there for teacher resources to be linked in, for student resources. We're moving away from our original drive on the computer, so people have kind of gone over to Google, and then this gives us another place to kind of house that stuff. So it's in a place where everybody can access it, as well as some notes on differentiation and inclusion. Being in the arts, that works so naturally for us to be able to make all of that work because students are working to their own ability level at their own time, and we're pushing a little here and there, but those things are very, very natural in the arts area. Vocabulary is included in there, and then a place for that teacher to tag in that they created that particular lesson. So those pages serve as sort of a resource for teachers, kind of like a PLC discussion area, especially for teachers who are really busy and maybe don't have time in their schedules to be able to do that adequately. You can go to that lesson page for that particular benchmark and see, okay, this is what Jim is doing, this is what Emily is doing, and there's room for some crossover and some discussion there. It also makes a really nice resource for anybody new coming into our school district. They could go to that page and see just how people are delivering those things. Of course, in the arts areas, our benchmarks tend to be more broad, so they do require a little bit more interpretation. And there's also a place in there if a teacher has altered a benchmark to fit a particular lesson that they're doing, that they can tag that in there as well. Okay? On that same lesson page, there's also a tab on the bottom that goes to basically a generic rubric. So there's a scoring device right in there already that's set to go. Not that teachers might not add their own as well. So it's pretty logical the way it's laid out. It's pretty easy to use. It can be printed out on an 11 by 17 sheet if somebody wanted to do that, to take their own notes on or use. Before we had a separate checklist, so this way the checklist and the curriculum document are all kind of in one. The new formatting creates a tool for sharing and discussion, provides a great resource for new teachers, enables very authentic assessment. I think the most authentic assessment I have seen happen within my content area, because we're going directly to that benchmark all the way there, and allows teachers to teach to their strengths and circumstances, allows flexibility and accountability. If it's your turn to be evaluated by your principal, you can go to that document and basically show, here's what I'm doing, here's how it fits, here's how it works in. Has a built-in checklist, provides a structure for teachers to demonstrate how they're assessing or working towards. And it chronicles any ongoing teacher training that we do and content pursuits, such as continually working with diversity content. We have workshops going on every year through UMD, through the school district, so there's constantly things to feed teachers in the area. And it allows us to keep increasing our media arts applications along the way and address site-specific protocols and needs. And it can continually be added to and can link to other lessons and resources and is constantly updatable. We're pretty excited about this. I shared it at the Standards Implementation Committee at MDE. They are very interested. Gail said I had to put our name on it. So make sure we do that along the way, but there's been a lot of interest in what we've been working on, so it's been very well received in our field. Our requested purchases, which I believe you also received a list of, replace some needed capital items such as kilns, document cameras, add and replace technology equipment to further increase our ability to work with media arts in our classrooms, even at the elementary level, which we have not had before. And added a few non-consumable visual arts tools as well, things that we've kind of wanted and not had the funds to pursue. Our elementary and secondary design teams are in your presentation as well. And our outside advisory group, who I think would be fun to continue to meet with on an occasional basis and give some updates as we grow this document along the way. And that's what I have for you. Brief. Any questions off the top? Sorry I didn't come here and make art with you today. That would be more fun, right? Okay.
Yeah, not really a comment and a question, but I just, Deb, so appreciate the years of work that you've given the district and the leadership that you've provided at the state level. I know you've been involved with a lot of things from advocacy to the standards, so just really appreciate that. Deb was one of my kids' elementary teachers when she was at the elementary level.
I think I've had like everybody's kid at one time.
Yeah, everybody's kid at one time, yeah. I think he had all four of mine at some level. But just so, first of all, just really appreciate your advocacy for the arts. You know, I've been a huge promoter of the arts. I was curious, and I appreciated you including the timeline from the Department of Education.
Yeah.
That was really helpful. I was curious, just with your community advisory committee.
Yeah.
So, how are you going to continue to use that committee for kind of?
Well, in past years, we've done some gathering of people, and there might be some opportunities in the future. We've been kind of looking at some possibilities of grants and things that we could perhaps get involved with. But we're a pretty tight-knit community anyway. Mm-hmm. So even if it's a matter of just having these connections, I mean, a number of these people already do workshops with us up at UMD. So there's a few new people on this list, some artists in the community and so on and so forth. I don't think it would be too difficult to get them to be involved in a couple of things. And I've already sent out invites to our art show, which opens the 22nd, and I forgot to bring those postcards for you, but I will be sure to send you an invite in email for that up at Miller Hill Mall. The reception is on the 24th. But
Okay.
yeah, good question, and I
Okay.
think it's just a matter of us continuing to reach out. And we have a very small staff, as you know, but each person sort of has different people that they communicate and connect with. So despite the few numbers in our department, we are able to keep some connections pretty well, I think, for the number of people that we have.
And please thank the other staff for the district as well as the community members for their support of our
Sure.
public schools and our art programs at all levels. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. 30 years. I'm on 30 right now, so thank you. Any other questions? And if any of you want to sit down and go through and look at examples, I am so happy to do that with you. Just let me know. I have flexibility in pulling those things together, okay?
So just a reassurance too from Director Netlin is to put your name on the Google document, because
Okay.
looking at your benchmarks, I mean, and the ability, I mean, this is just going to be such a lasting document for our art programs to be able to look at the benchmarks, click on some examples of how some of our art teachers are using it for a lesson is going to be invaluable for a new art teacher, or just for a PLC. When you were going through it, I thought, well, this is what we do in PLCs. We share our lessons, we address benchmarks and target areas, and we try to do that. I also was going to applaud the community advisory group and hope
I
that
will
you'll
pass
stay
that on.
committed and connected to them. And I also really liked your curriculum audit, where you started to see where teachers, what they were currently doing, and where, because we all know what we are good at and we teach to our strengths. And so
Yeah.
it was really, it was interesting to see that was a first ask of your progress there. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I know for me, sitting down and doing it with my lessons, and I've done this a long time, there were areas where I went, oh my gosh, this is a place where I need to work harder to make these, include these items. So I think it is a really authentic.
It'd be a great model for all of our departments, like all English 9 teachers, or I don't know.
It's free, it's Google. So
It's good, yeah.
Can I just add
Yep.
one more thing? Yeah, and I also appreciated that you had the kilns on there. Some of you might not know, but Deb has been involved over the years with the Empty Bowl, which is a fundraiser also for the community and for our food shelves, and has helped make thousands of bowls and helped our kids make thousands of bowls in our kilns. And so I know they didn't do it this year, but they are hopefully planning on
taking a
doing it
little
again.
break after 25 years.
So leadership that way in the community, as well as making use of our kilns for a really wonderful learning lesson for our kids. So
Thank you. Thank you. And you're welcome anytime if you want to get into an art classroom. Absolutely. Please come. We're animating right now in my room, so it's kind of a hoot. Okay. Thank you. Good? Okay. Thanks.
Then we're going to go back to Assistant Superintendent's monthly report.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
Yep. Thank you so much. I have to go to class, so I'm going to take off. Okay.
All right. Thank you again very much. I want to start out with the site celebration. I want to mention Denfeld's debate team. The Denfeld debate team, Duluth has a rich history in debate, going back to 1942. They have a very strong history and they have wonderful traditions. And we've seen some excellent people come through there. Judge Mark Munger, for example, Public Defender Fred Freeman, and CEO Mike Kuzo, all just great examples have come through the debate team. And Alana Oswald has come through the debate team. I just learned this. Some wonderful leaders in our community, and there are many others as well. But that tradition continued recently. The Public Forum Section 5 champs are actually from Duluth Denfeld this year, so just wanted to highlight them for a site celebration, and just a great job to everybody involved in the development of those students and helping them have success there. So thought that was wonderful. We did 2 walkthroughs this past month. We did one at Leicester and we did one at Ordine. At Leicester, we went through, they tried a new tool. Each site usually has a practice profile that they use, and a team of us goes out. Dr. Lake, Mrs. Netlin Freud, Superintendent Gronseth, and myself go out there, and we go through and use a walkthrough tool and with the principals. And so they tried a new MTSS implementation checklist, and so we got to try that for the first time, which was really neat. Saw some amazing things that the staff are doing out there. We also went out to Ordine, and they also have a practice profile that they did, and they did a wonderful job out there. I saw lots of wonderful things at the site. So just continue to see amazing things from our staff and our building leaders on the development of our students. And so just really exciting to see all of those pieces. Some highlights this month. I wanted to talk just a little bit about the ADSIS application. We did apply for some funds for early intervention, and that grant, or that funding, was submitted to the state. So we're hopeful that we'll see some great things happen there. That application was for Leicester, Congdon, Holmcroft, and Lakewood. This would add a little bit more FTE in some of those places, as well as introducing some math, and supports our MTSS work, which is one of our 3 primary strategies in our World's Best Workforce Plan. So we're excited and hopeful that we'll get some funding through that. Additionally, I wanted to highlight a supportive discipline and community of practice. Mr. Lake and I went out to a training in Sartell, and one of the trainers, Carol Lieber, she helped write a book called Shifting Gears, and she's helping to facilitate this training in partnership with the Minnesota Department of Education. We also received this book from the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, and really feel like this work is really going to help us take a look at our school discipline policy, at our handbook, and just reducing suspensions across the board in our district. So we went to an initial meeting. We felt that this would be something we want to share with some others, so we'll be reaching out to some folks, and this is a multi-part training, and we're going to be going to more as we continue to review our discipline policy, and as we continue to look at our handbook and how we can improve our practices and support students in keeping them in school. So a lot more learning to happen there, a lot more conversations, but this is probably long-term progress, and I thought you'd like an update on this based on our conversation about our school discipline policy and kind of where we're kind of picking that up. And so we felt we want to really invest in that process, and this will be a great way to do that. So this is a starting point for that. P3 updates. So we used to call this the pre-K3 team. Now we call it P3. We've gone prenatal, and so talking all the way from prenatal through grade 3, how we can support. And we had a meeting not too long ago and really had some wonderful conversations. And one that I want to highlight is around kindergarten readiness. Is what does it mean to be ready for kindergarten? And there's a lot of different definitions out there, and depending who you ask, you get some very different answers. Our early childhood teams worked very closely with the community and received all sorts of input there. At our P3 meeting, we received additional input. We're looking forward to our advisory committee coming up next week, I believe, and we're going to be getting some additional input there. We'll also be applying the T tool to this as we look at what is kindergarten readiness, as we really kind of try to come to a definition of what does that really mean for us. So really excited around some of the work there and the hard work and the input we've been able to receive from lots of different people. We had our summer school meeting, and summer school will be starting soon, and so it was really a fun meeting for me, and I said that to the group. It's a lot of people I work with on a regular basis, but I don't really have all those folks in the same meeting together, and it was just really interesting. So many people working hard to make things work for students, give them extra opportunity to earn credits, offer summer programming through our Excel program. Just really wonderful, and it was just a really exciting meeting and exchange of ideas, and just a lot of people coming together to make the logistics work to help kids, and that was really, really fun. That we're going to be getting that going soon, and we're very excited that Duluth, I want to say it right, Duluth Transportation, is it DTA is what? Okay, the DTA, they're going to extend the route through summer that goes to Lincoln, so we'll have some transportation for students that they were reviewing whether or not they were going to run that route, and I know there's a lot of people in our community and administrators, teachers, staff, board members have all said, hey, you know what, we would really appreciate it if you could extend this, and they are going to extend that, and then I think continue to review that. So a thank you to them, and thank you to all of you that helped to make that happen. Last highlight is just Alice. We're continuing our implementation of Alice, and so we'll be moving into our next lockdown soon. We'll be looking at what that means at each level. Again, pre-K through K, middle school and high school. The next focus is going to be on counter and what that means or doesn't mean for different groups of people. So our safety team has been working very hard on that, and we're going to continue to work with staff and develop that. Also excited that we've secured some training dates too for, we really want to work with our non-certified staff. We did have an opportunity to train the trainer with our certified staff. We're going to get a free training actually from Alice, and this is a free training where they're going to do a 2-day training like we did last, I think it was September that we did it with our certified and some of our administrators to make them train the trainers, and we're going to empower our non-certified staff to be leaders in this work, and then we'll be following up with the training where they'll get a chance to partner with some of that work as well. So that's coming up in May, and we've got a couple dates secured for that. We'll be reaching out to folks soon, and we're pretty excited about that. So more work coming with Alice. And lastly, I just want to give a shout out to 6th grade science class over at Lincoln. About a month and a half ago, I was over there for a walkthrough, and I went into Miss Britton and Miss Molly's class, and it's a co-talk class, and I was approached by a young man who was just extremely passionate about science. Sat me down, talked to me about all the wonderful things about the planet Venus and the amazing things that there are about it. And we sat, it was probably 5 minutes. I think the rest of the group left me behind actually, which sometimes happens on our visits. And we continued to talk about what was so amazing about Venus. And I asked that when the assignment was done, if I could see, what he learned, because there's verbally articulating all sorts of things. Well, this young man sent me some research and had a paragraph and some pictures and just a great example in that classroom of creating passion, teaching writing, and teaching students how to research. So I just saw a wonderful blend, and I just want to give a shout out to those 2 teachers and the young man in that classroom. That is the end of my report for this month.
I just noticed that member Oswald doesn't have a mic in front. Oh, you're going to share that. Okay. See no questions.
I actually have a question. No.
She did.
Oh, she does. Okay.
She's looking for the mic.
I just want to have some clarity about the ADSYS application. Is it for additional staff or to continue what we're already doing? And what is our likelihood of getting that grant? Do you have any idea?
Great question. The answer is both. It will continue some programming that we have. We've also been able to add a few pieces to that as well. Our likelihood of getting it is we have had this before, but this is a little bit more expanded. So I can't predict what they will decide, but I think the team worked hard to put together a really strong application. And there's a lot of hours invested by the team, and I think we have a pretty solid team, and I think I'm very hopeful.
Member Kemp, Loeffler Kemp.
Thank you for your shout-outs. My question is about the supportive discipline training you and Ron Lake went to. So are you thinking through some kind of timeline on that, or where are you going to go with it?
Great question. I think what we went out there to really learn more about what it is. It's an investment to go through this. It's a lot. It's some time. And so we wanted to kind of gauge where it was, and we talked to the folks at MD and said, we think we're interested, but we want to come and do a little bit of learning. So the 2 of us started that, knowing that there were some revisions that maybe needed to be done with our school discipline policy, and could this work and fit in well? Does it work with MTSS? How does it support some of the different work that we've done already? And the answers was a lot of yeses, and so we were encouraged by what we learned. There's 7 total trainings that happen, 1 more this year, and there's 5 next year. So I think what we're really looking at is we'd be looking at a long-term project, maybe for next school year, might be a time when we'd be ready. I don't want to, it's hard for me to put an exact time on it. I still have more learning to do myself, and I think we have to engage some of our team members here in the district and figure out what are other places we need to go get some input from. So, but I would imagine that we're in a, it's interesting that they teach you some tools, they give you some skills, they give you some strategies, they give you some processes that you can do and bring back. And so we would need to talk as a team as we could kind of do that work parallel with it. So we go out and learn some things, we bring it back, do we do it, or do we do a few trainings and then do that? We still have to work out those details. So we're kind of early on the process, but it's going to be a longer term project, I think.
Follow up on another point, but I just wanted to, okay. Thank you for the update on the expansion of the ALICE training for other staff. And as we all know, we had a horrible incident on April 5th, and our staff all did some incredible things. I'm looking over at a few of them, principals from across the district, and just wondering how we're going to evaluate the ALICE piece of what took place took place on April 5th to our current trainings.
Yeah, good question. We do have this. We meet as principals one to two times a month. We meet as a team, and so we will be debriefing on that this Wednesday at our principal meeting to talk about kind of what has happened there. We've had some conversation here at Hawks and started some documenting just like what things worked really well, what are some areas that maybe we could revise and continue to improve upon. So we're entering those discussions. Superintendent Gronseth has scheduled a meeting with the Duluth Police Department, and so there will be people from our district there as well as the police department, and then I believe maybe some others. He can probably speak to that better. But we'll be doing some debriefing both internally and then also with our emergency responders and different people in the community on how we're supportive with each other in those situations.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent. So we'll go to Director Netlin's report.
Thank you. My report is going to be brief tonight, partly because curriculum takes up a lot of other agenda items tonight. So you just have a note in there as far as curriculum that the art update was going to be happening. You've already heard from Deb. And then we have an adoption recommendation, which I'll wait to talk about a little bit later. But as far as professional development, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. The first one is our P3 Part 3. This was a 3-part training a district leadership team of strategically picked people went to over the course of the year. And I had the opportunity to go all 3 times, and it was really an interesting opportunity to intentionally collaborate between kind of the K-12 world and the early childhood world. That's something that doesn't always naturally happen. And so it was an opportunity to talk about alignment and make sure that we're on the same page and we're supporting kids since we get them at a very young age and we move through, and we sometimes forget about how that might feel to a kid going through the system or a family. So we were focused a lot on alignment and really just building some relationships. And out of that is the second bullet, which I'm really excited about. We are doing some handwriting training coming up for kindergarten teachers, focused on developmentally appropriate handwriting instruction. And we had the opportunity to have our early childhood staff be trained in that ahead of time, is to make sure that we've got alignment so we're all on the same page that way. So we're having the same information shared, both pre-K and K. So that was kind of a really exciting first step from my point of view, thinking about alignment. And then the training for the kindergarten staff, we're still waiting to hear back on a couple of people, figuring out the best days, but that'll happen sometime in May for sure. So that is really all I have specifically for my report. Again, the adoption information will come a little bit later.
Any questions for Director Netland? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So our next is we'll invite our Director of Head Start, Pam Reese, up to talk about federal Head Start status. Thanks, Pam.
Well, hi, folks. I wish I had better news for you, but I do have a document that I think will explain some of what is missing for you. So let's pass that around if you would, okay? So just about a month after I announced my retirement at the end of this school year, I opened my email to this notice of recompetition and thought there must have been a mistake. And so after I retrieved my heart from my stomach because it dropped, thinking, what are we doing in recompetition? I started reaching out to some folks and trying to understand what had happened. So what this means is that back in 2016, here's all the documents from a health and safety review that we had. There were a few concerns, and when things come up in Head Start and they reach a certain level, they're one of the 7 deadly sins that can get you into recompetition. And so we met that because we had a deficiency. We have always had large garbage cans, the big, huge ones like you take out to the curb, that are covered, and those are used for art projects, for food service, that sort of thing. And they're closed after meals, so kids aren't exposed to that. All the other trash cans in our rooms were just regular trash cans without covers. So that was the issue, that they needed to be covered because apparently paper is highly problematic for children and it's not safe. Yes, I'm being facetious. So there was that. And that although in each classroom there is a notice, there's a memo from me stating what equipment children can use on the playgrounds, the reviewer was concerned about how close some of the taller structures were to some of the smaller ones. And then we had some places where this was pre-wood chips. We had the rubber stuff that gets kicked away. Had been moved from under the tire swing. And so way back when we bought rakes for every classroom and said, just take a rake out with you, make sure it's covered so kids don't get injured when they're out there. And we have replaced some fencing, all sorts of things that weren't in place when we opened early childhood classrooms in different buildings. So it was a bit of a concern to us that these somewhat minor things rose to the level of a deficiency. And so I reached out to the supervisor of our program officer in Chicago, and she said, don't tell them I told you to do this, but write a dispute. And so I did, to the Office of Head Start, to say that at no time were any children in danger. So at the very least, this deficiency should be downgraded to a non-compliance, both of them. And that would take us out of the recompetition pool. The other person I talked to was our executive director for the Minnesota Head Start Association, Gail Kelly, a Duluthian, and she was shocked because she knew that we got a letter saying, your case is closed, nothing more to do, you've fixed everything, we added signage, we bought new covered garbage cans, we've done all we could do. So I did write the dispute, sent it in. I got a note back right away that they'd review it immediately because of the time frame and my retirement and all of that. But it was denied. And so we're in the process. And I didn't tell our staff until I knew what the final answer was. And then I had them all come in on a Friday and let them wonder about what great announcement there was going to be. And what I told them was, this was a Friday morning, and I said, you have until 7:30 Monday to complain and moan about it, and then we're moving on. Then we're moving on because we're in recompetition, we have things we have to do, we have families to serve, and it does us no good to stay stuck there. We are in this system. This is what our system, provides for. And so in many ways, it's just our turn. I was hoping to get out of here before that happened, but that didn't happen either. So do you have questions about that, how this happened?
Member Sanson.
Thank you. My question is not so much about how it happened. I appreciate your explanation. What does it mean? What are the possible implications here?
Okay. What it means is that our program has an opportunity to recompete for our grant. So when the RFP for our grant comes out, other entities can apply for it. And if they show the Office of Head Start that they can do a better job than what we will show, then, the best grant wins. But how it goes is people get their grants back. They've been able to make incredible changes, raise their cost per child, figure out some things that they struggled with, and now they can do better. And so when I've spoken to other directors who've been in this situation, they say, just get over it and start planning, because it can be a really good thing for your program, for your community. So that's what happens. And on March 4th, when I got this notice, I went to see Mr. Gronseth and Mr. Horton, and I said that, I'm still leaving, but that I am going to be in town and that I'm happy to help make this happen. So to come back and help whoever the new person is write this, help the team write this, because it really is teamwork, parents working on it. Okay?
Two brief questions, I guess. One, do you know of any other entity that wants to compete for this, and does that mean in our area, or is there people in other cities that will be competing? And the second question is, knowing that we braid our funding to serve multiple income families, do you view that as a pro or a con when we reapply?
I think it's a pro. There's even language in the new performance standards for Head Start about if you can collaborate with community pre-K programs, they're encouraging us to do that. I don't know of any other place that wants to apply. And I think if they looked at the standards, they'd run. They would run away.
Yeah. Well, Pam, you have done incredible work with this program, and I was so honored to be on the governing board my first 3 years as a school board member. So I know how hard you've worked and how thoughtful you are when the federal folks come in to review, and how you've made sure board members have been at the table, as well as parents have been at the table in those discussions. So I don't question how this could have happened from our end. So what I want to know is, how can we help support you and support our staff with this process, and how we as a board can help us get the funds we need to do the work we've been doing so well.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think there'll be information we need to write this giant grant. So any kind of cooperation we can get on that, and we always do get great cooperation, so I'm not worried about it. But I think attitude is really important, and so that's why I said to the staff, you have the weekend. Then we're done pissing and moaning about it. It's done. Well, really, you know, we have work to do. So I would like all of you to adopt that same attitude. Let's just move on. Could be really good.
So my question is that we have funding for next school year, and
Yes.
if I understand it, we're going to be writing the grants in the next 6. When does this grant have to be submitted?
I don't have a date yet,
Okay.
but the process is that this year that we're finishing is the 5th in a 5-year cycle. And so we're going to extend that 1 year, and the goals that are in that grant, everything that's in that grant, we just continue. We have a budget. We're getting ready to submit that May 1st. So that will be fine. And then next year, you know, hopefully soon they'll let us know a due date so we can kind of do a backwards plan on what needs to happen.
And we've gone through the grant process at least one time, right? I mean, we've been able to get the new grant because we've had it before.
Well, we haven't been in recompetition.
Yes,
We've
we
been in
haven't.
a continuation
Yes.
model, so it's assumed that, you know, if we hadn't gotten this and we're in the next 5-year grant cycle in the fall, it's
Yeah,
assumed
okay.
that that's our grant. Yeah.
But we're positive too. We have you've got good history for writing the grants. We know how to write them. We know what to put in there, like you said earlier.
There's a lot
so.
of support for us
Yeah.
around the state, lots of programs that have done the same, and they will send us whatever we need and help in any way they can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a second part to your presentation? I know that
It's
you
later.
appear on another.
It's later.
Can we go to it?
Sure.
Would
Sure,
that be?
if you don't mind.
Okay, I don't mind. Let's go to that. I think it's. Is it a resolution or a budget?
It is our grant application, continuing grant application.
It's 2E1, A1.
It's on page 30.
I need my water, excuse me.
33. The title page said.
And what do we need to do? We need to.
Okay, so
yeah.
I can just explain this is the same information that our policy council got about a week and a half ago. And it is in regard to the federal grant that we've been talking about. So you can see the operations amount, $2,318,424. That's to serve 239 children. Then we also received notice of a cost of living allowance. And as has always been the case for us, we can't just plop that into our salaries because we're already on a very generous salary scale. So for all of our folks. So when we write about our COLA, that information, all the information about the units that are our bargaining units are listed, and it shows what people get in terms of percentages of raises. So then we go on to, well, what will we use that COLA for? And there is something we have been thinking about for quite a while, and that is to buy a new curriculum and assessment. And the curriculum is called Creative Curriculum. It's used by most of our colleagues around the state. And I know both Jeff and Gail were excited that the assessment tool is called TS Gold, and that works well with what is used in kindergarten.
There's some good alignment.
There's some good alignment, okay, yeah. And so we had a teacher pilot that curriculum this year. She's done a great job and loves it. The assessment is pretty slick and makes a lot of their work easier. Lesson planning is easier. And so we're going to go with that. We've gotten preliminary approval from our grant officer saying that would be a good, that fits under supplies, and that's one of the things you can buy with COLA money if you can't pay your people more. The training and technical assistance piece has always been there, and basically the way I explain that is it's money that feeds our trainings for staff, parent and family engagement in the community. It can do a lot of things, but it can't pay our staff. So we can pay for trainers, but we can't pay for the staff to attend a training with that amount of money. And so the federal grant partially funds the following: the business manager, 2 clerical staff, me, 4 service area coordinators, a recruiter, 10 paras, 10 teachers, 5 family advocates, and 2 mental health consultants. In addition, there are line items for food, transportation, travel, meals, lodging, insurance that's required on Head Start children, and our indirect charges. So in our collaboration, Head Start has the largest contribution in terms of funds and also the largest number of children served. And I think we've done some really good work this year talking about how to make that viable for the future. And so I think we're in good shape. We'll be submitting that May 1st.
Any questions? Superintendent.
Pam, on the sheet that we're looking at in board book, it says 9 paras and 9 teachers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's supposed to be 10.
Okay.
I made a correction probably after I sent that to Michelle.
Probably
So-
the updated version will probably be in board book then.
Yes.
For the
right,
regular meeting.
Right. 10 paras, 10 teachers. The difference is we have a float teacher and a float para that we use when we have a need to pull a teacher out to do coaching, to work on assessment, to do our class observations, any of that sort of thing. Okay. I have one last thing I just wanted to share with you, and you can just pass that around. I'm sure I'll be back because I have a state grant that's also coming soon, but I'm sending you my my retirement notice, my letter, and it's the weirdest thing. And every day there's something new, like, oh, it's the last spring break. Oh, it's the last meeting I'll have with these folks or whatever. So, but I'm sending you that because I wanted you to know that it's been a really great ride, and I appreciate all your help and support. And I will be in the community offering anything you need. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.
So that means you're signing up to be a sub in our district?
I'm not
Okay.
I've signed up to be a reader.
Yeah,
So
agree. I know you will,
talk
Pam.
in the corner and read until my voice quits, and then I'll go home.
It's an honor to have you here today, too. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
I was going to say.
Keep moving the meeting.
We're going to invite our American Indian Education Coordinator, Edie Howes, and her committee to go over our agenda item E, a resolution of concurrence or non-concurrence for 2018 and 19. Thank you very much. Thanks for waiting and being a part of our meeting tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Before we get started, I have a couple updated copies for you all. It's just one page, two-sided. Yeah, since we were on a pretty tight deadline, I got some correspondence from some of the committee members saying, did you remember to add this? Did you? And I was like, oh gosh. So I added what they needed, and there's the updated version for you all. There's one for you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Danny Dunphy. I am a member of the American Indian Education Parent Advisory Board.
So I'd like to thank you all for having us here. As you know, this is something that we do yearly, and I believe this will be the first time we have a few of you to the right at the table while we're doing our resolution of concurrence and non-concurrence. So I was told to be brief, and I can do that, definitely. Oh yeah, I know, but I know how to be brief because I too, as well, would like to make it to Myers-Wilkins for this evening's event there. So, as you can tell, there are 6 additional items that are different from last year that I just want to focus on, which the first one would be the kindergarten readiness. Last year we had talked about hiring someone to bring that American Indian cultural perspective to the Head Start. That was one of our recommendations, was to hire someone with knowledge and experience to ensure Head Start is providing culturally relevant programming and recruitment for our families and the community. After having some conversations with Pam and looking for someone to hire with those credentials, we've had a hard time finding someone, and so after having a discussion with our committee, we thought that this year, since there is still no one in place in early childhood level to provide the ongoing culturally relevant support for our families and students, we thought it would be a great idea to connect with early childhood program and begin to train some of their teachers, especially the float teachers that they're talking about that go into the classroom and are there for additional support. And so one of our parent committee members is a teacher representative and she works in early childhood, and she thought that would be an appropriate recommendation or situation for us to bring that perspective into early childhood programming. So that was a difference in last year's resolution. Another one that we focused on was increasing the number of American Indian students to reading at grade level by 3rd grade. And I know the person that recommended this one and utilizing funds from title programs that are for ELL. I was hoping she would make it here, but she got held up in a meeting, so she can explain that a little bit more. I was trying to have her explain it to me, and she's works in education for Fond du Lac right now, and so she heard something, and she said, I think we need to do this in Duluth Public Schools, and I thought, all right, I need some more information, but I have to put their information and recommendations on here because they are the ones that develop it, and I just go with it. So there's that. Another concern within our committee would be down at the college and career readiness section. Increase the number of American Indian students who are college or career ready. One of the main concerns that I've been hearing and that our committee members have been hearing are that our special education students are not being exposed consistently to college and career readiness options, meaning our American Indian students on IEPs are not being exposed to college and career readiness options. And so a recommendation is to make sure that we provide all of our American Indian students career and college readiness guidance through school guidance counselors. I do know that they did talk about some of their case managers occasionally will, but I believe with the high amounts of American Indian students that we have in special services, we want to make sure that they're college and career ready as well. And that's a huge concern for our parents and our community members. And let's see. On the second page under other items, I don't know if you all are aware, but previously I was allotted $50,000 towards our program from general fund. It got dropped down to 10. I'm sure you're all aware of that, but I don't know how many of you are aware of the fact that as American Indian Education Programming for Duluth Public Schools, I generate the funding to provide my salary, my office support specialist salary, and maybe one other person. We do get funding from special services that provides us 3 American Indian homeschool liaisons, but I feel like we're definitely running a program on very little money, trying to do the best that we can, serving over approximately 600 American Indian students district-wide. And so I know in the past, we did receive a decent amount, but our committee is asking to get that back up to, $50,000 where it was before coming from general fund, since that is the only money that we do get from the general fund or the school district, because I do generate funding from the state and from federal American Indian funding. And that goes down to the next one. We did make some progress in resources allocated for Indian education in Massabiquang. We did get the 0.6 FTE that Nueva Visión gets, but we realized that it's still not enough to meet the needs for Massabiquang. It clearly isn't. And so their recommendation is still looking at how are we staffing appropriately to meet the needs, not just looking at what is Nueva Visión getting, but what are the needs and how are we funding the needs of our immersion program, especially if that's an investment that was made and continuing to be made by Duluth Public Schools. Another concern that was brought up was lack of private adequate space for our American Indian homeschool liaisons in their buildings. Meaning we understand that we have a lot of programming in our schools, especially our elementary schools, that are really beneficial to all of our students, but it is really hard when we have American Indian homeschool liaisons sharing offices with numerous people, and they're trying to do small reading groups or de-escalation or anything like that with sharing a space with 2 or 3 other people. And it's really, from my observation in my monthly staff meetings, it's getting pretty frustrating for my staff knowing that they have limited space, and sometimes they're meeting in the hallways, sometimes quietly meeting in the media centers. When it's nice out, they go for walks, but realistically, there's a need for adequate space, private space for our staff to work out of. And that's a huge concern. And then this one kind of ties in with funding, not enough staff support to serve the approximately 600 American Indian students in Duluth Public Schools. Currently, I only have 4 staff, meaning 3 come from special services. 1 comes from our Title VI federal funding. And then I have a part-time clerical that helps run my department as well as Masabe Kong. A recommendation would be maybe dedicate some resources or funding from general fund or title programs to increase the amount of staff serving American Indian students, as well as year after year I've been requesting to have a full-time clerical, and year after year I've been getting denied, even though the funding comes directly from the funding that I generate. I really do need a full-time clerical, and one of the concerns that I've had from my parent committee and my staff was having a part-time clerical that leaves at 3 o'clock every day. Our staff are still working, and they work till 4:30, and they need to do after school business with clerical. We have parent committee meetings monthly from, what did we switch them to, 5:30? 5:30 to 7:30. We need a clerical there helping us get through that as well. And so just having lack of a full-time person has made it kind of hard for not only our parent committee but our staff to function after 3 o'clock every day. Was there anything else that...
Member Oswald?
Okay, Ms. Dunphy. I will ask you something, I guess, since you put me on the spot. Well, my first comment is that, this is my 4th year of sitting here for resolutions of non-concurrence. And as I'm looking at last year's one on board book on my computer and comparing it to the one in front of me that you handed out, I see that there's very little movement. And my question is, at any time during the year, do you pull this out and converse about your needs and your wants and how this plan is working into how you do your business throughout the year? Or is this, you bring it to us and then it goes away and then your parents talk about it again next year and you bring it to us? I mean, how is this useful?
That's a good question. This here has nothing to do with how I function as American Indian Education. This document is how Duluth Public Schools as a district functions in regards to American Indian students. So we do look at it as a parent committee, and I invite the parent committee to the yearly school district update, and they get the data, and they look at that, and they're like, well, a little bit of progress has been made, but it's not good enough. That's kind of the extent, because realistically it's looking at what is the school district doing in regards to American Indian students, not what is the American Indian Education Department doing in regards to American Indian students. This is directly based on the school district, and I do know occasionally we do talk about some of these things, but not to the extent that I believe we need to.
And can I say that I've been at this for 10 years, and this has changed very little in 10 years. The statistics on graduation have changed very little in 10 years. The statistics on our testing results have changed very little in the last 10 years. So it's a little frustrating to come here every year asking the district to help us out, and year after year seeing this just filed away and nothing being done by the district. I really see the progress that has been made, largely been made by the efforts of the people who are employed through the American Indian Education Department who do a wonderful job and frankly go well above and beyond what we've ever asked them to do. They're doing small little therapy sessions in groups where they're sharing space with large amounts of other people, trying to keep our kids in school, trying to fill that gap. Our students are saying they don't feel comfortable in the regular classrooms, so they're coming to the Indian Education Department because they feel comfortable there. And I think the district needs to ask themselves, why aren't our kids feeling comfortable in those classrooms? Why are they being successful when they come into the Indian Education program but not in the school, in the classrooms? So I guess, what is the district going to do about this is my question to you, because I don't want this just to be filed away again. I really want you to look at this and figure out what the district is going to do to help our kids.
I'll yield to Superintendent.
Superintendent?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of cover next steps. This is the first step in this process, is bringing it to the board as informational, and then, or is this under action? No, it's informational. and then we get together and, because I think we have some questions too about the data that's in here and kind of some of the other pieces. And we'll be adding another column to this about our response and what our plan is and how we'll work towards that. And then it comes back to the board for you to take action on it.
Thank you. And I think this is probably a question for the superintendent as well. I was just re-listening to the budget committee of the whole, and we are focused on a needs-based budget, and I wanted to ensure that there is communication happening between the groups here, the American Indian Education and Parent Committee, and if we're gathering our budget needs list from principals, if they're on the same page, if this is information that's being shared.
Kathy and I, or Kathy and Peggy, depending on availability, are also meeting with departments. And so if Edie hasn't met already, she will be meeting with Kathy and Peggy as well, as will William and Brad Veiths and Jay Rossler, other departments in the district.
Edie, can I ask if you get federal and state monies that are just come right to your educational program? And I know that you outlined some staff that you have that you pay with that money. Are there other curriculum or materials or other things that the federal and state monies cover for us to work with our students?
I get money, federal title dollars that are based on student counts of American Indian students, and so we can develop a budget as we see needed. So I have one American Indian homeschool liaison, and then she has a budget for curriculum supplies or cultural or contracted services, those types of things for her to, not just her, but for the other three American Indian homeschool liaisons to utilize. We also get Indian education program funding through the state, and that is also based on count of American Indian students. And that we do develop a budget again as well, and we can utilize it for professional development, for cultural activities, for language, anything having to do with education of American Indians or educating on American Indians, because we believe that the funding isn't just for American Indians, it is for the district-wide to educate our district as well. We do get a small portion from curriculum for curricular resources, and we specifically utilize that for curriculum for Massabi-Kong, because that's where it's really needed, is looking for our immersion. But a majority of our funding is really based on covering my salary, my office support specialist, and one other person, and then the rest of it goes towards classroom supplies, general supplies, professional development opportunities, and then just cultural and contracted services, so we can bring that to our schools across the district.
Member Oswald?
I was just curious if you have been able to meet with CFO Erickson yet. If you've met with Kathy Erickson yet. Not yet. So that concerns me a little bit, because we're getting a preliminary budget tomorrow. So that tells me that anything that they need hasn't been negotiated yet or figured in, and that bothers me. And so I hope that we have some opportunity to talk about that after we get our presentation tomorrow. I also wanted to ask if you feel that the immersion, the American Indian immersion program, do you feel that it is supported just as well as the Spanish immersion program, or do you feel like you're in competition with them for resources? Do you share resources? How does it work in comparison to one another? Because I know they're two different cultures, two different languages, and I know that it's always a challenge with Ojibwe because there aren't any ready-made resources. So I know it's a hard comparison.
You're definitely right. It is two different programs, and I look at it as two different programs. I don't feel like we're in competition. Okay. I feel like both programs have different needs. You can go online and order Spanish materials in math, English, science, whatever. For us, we are creating stuff daily. I believe that our teachers go above and beyond because they are teaching in another language. They are going home every night, making sure that they have Ojibwe appropriate lessons for the next day. I believe that our staff work 7 days a week because they need to. And because they have to in order for us to continue providing the program that we want to provide for our families. And so I don't want to say that I don't feel supported. We just feel frustrated because we are working 7 days a week. And I understand there are union policies in place as far as, I've talked to other immersion programs and asked them, well, what do you all pay your teachers? Because this is a huge need. We have a lot of good people out there, but because we don't pay our teachers as well as other immersion programs, we're not getting as many people here as we would like to. So I don't want to say I don't feel like we're in competition and not getting as much support. It's just a different program, and the way that we function is culturally different. I mean, we make do with what we have because we have for thousands of years, but we're getting tired.
Thank you. Just a follow-up then on Ms. Abakong. Are you having conversations with the curriculum director or others about how the students will proceed once they are through 5th grade, which I think the first class is going to be in 5th grade next year, right? Yeah. Where are those conversations at for how we're supporting our Misabakong students in middle school?
Well, I can answer this as well as Gail. We've started the conversation. I feel like we've had this conversation continuously since Gail started, because that was one of her concerns as well. And we are still in the process of brainstorming and looking at what are some options and what will they look like, how will they benefit our students. And we also decided that we really want to get parent input as far as what would they like, what will it look like for them, and what would they want it to look like for their students. So we are having those conversations.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know we need to move on, but just the last couple questions have got me to wonder, what are our numbers looking like right now in the program, especially at the upper grade levels? Thank you.
Are we talking about immersion or American Indian education? Okay. In our upper grade levels right now, in our 3rd and 4th grade class, we have 18 students. Our first and second grade class, we have 35, and that's a split class.
I just have one last question. As I was looking in past years at the concurrence, non-concurrence form, they were all due by March 1st. Is that the case with this too, that it was already submitted?
I am lucky to have a really good relationship with the people at the State Indian Education Office. I asked them for an extension back in February, and they granted it to me because we've been pretty busy as a committee, and there's just some information that took us a little bit longer to get. So we have an extension. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. Thank you for being proactive with that.
Thank you both very much. We appreciate the feedback, and we'll look at that as we move forward, too. It's important that we're getting all the information we need. Thanks. You'll have time to scoot over to Myers-Wilkins, and we will get through these next items in 5 minutes. So if you look at our agenda, you'll know that on Tuesday we're going to look at 6 grants. And are there any questions about any of the grants that you've had a chance to look through? And then continuing down our agenda, we have 2 grant partnerships that we're just going to recommend as informational from community learning centers and Out of the Box at Lincoln Park. Then we have some action items. We've already heard from Pam Reese on our federal Head Start grant. And how about our fine arts adoption? Do we need something for that, Gail? Well, I mean, we're going to look at it and adopt it on Tuesday.
Yep, so attached you'll find the letters from each of the different areas of arts that are doing the adoption this year, both music and then art. And so there are the budgets and the specific items. If you have any questions, otherwise should be routine.
So do these requests from music and art on their expenditures, their needs, when we do our budget, that is included, where they're going to be able to be assured they're getting this money, or is this what they're asking for and then you have to decide how much money will go around?
So the way this works is this is for this current fiscal year, so the funds are available, and I'm recommending it based on their recommendations. We've had ongoing conversations, so this is the formal part of it.
Our weapons policy, is there any, this is a second reading, so if we approve it on Tuesday, it's going to go into policy. You've had a chance to look that over. Are there questions? I know that, Mr. Horton, can you just reiterate quickly, like in 30 seconds, what you added? Because we had asked for something. Is it in there? Didn't we ask for anything?
Good question. I reached out to the MSBA for clarification around the language, and we thought that there might be some things that were contradictory. And going through it with them, actually, I don't think that we need to make any changes to it. The key distinction is firearm versus a weapon. So we looked at the different legal pieces behind this and what a firearm expulsion, suspension would be versus a regular one, or just a 6-inch, 2-inch, whatever, pocket knife or something like that. So really the pursuant to law for a firearm being defined in federal law to school expelled for at least 1 year, that was really the clarification point. And the other piece said not to exceed a year. Not to exceed a year is for non-firearms. At least 1 year is for firearms. So that's taken right out of the statute. So I think they clarified it for me, and going back and rereading it, I felt that I think it's there. I think just when we read it, we thought, it's very easy to connect them, but
Yeah, it looked like it was contradictory.
Yeah, but I think it does read okay. So I guess my recommendation is keep the legal.
Superintendent Granson.
I did want to call attention to D2. I'm not sure which number it was. We had some conversation about the circumstances under which an employee or an employee could have a firearm in their vehicle, and I wanted that to be as restrictive as possible. And so this paragraph was added after conversations with attorneys on what restrictions could we place that would make it as difficult as possible to have a handgun or a pistol in a vehicle on school property.
Member Oswald?
Just a quick question about any legislation that could potentially pass about arming teachers in schools. Would these kinds of policies and state laws that guide these policies have to be rescinded at that point if our state should go that way?
Superintendent Grenza?
If there was a federal or state law that did that, we would need to change our policies because the law supersedes policy. Did I use the right word, supersedes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there we go.
So moving forward then, if we don't have any more questions on the weapon policy, when we accept this report on Tuesday, that will go through. We have some resolutions about accepting some grants that we're going to do. We have an extended trip from our auto program that was actually just this past weekend, but their request was done last month, so we're just going to make sure that that gets accepted. And we have some diplomas to celebrate on Tuesday night. With that, I think our Education Committee, is there any questions? This concludes our Education Committee. I thank all of those presenters that came tonight, Deb Hanu and Pam Reese and Edie Howes and Danny Dunphy, and really got some great information. So thank you all very much, and drive safely over to Myers-Wilkins if you're going there, or we'll see you tomorrow.